I'm very happy to introduce to you, she's already introduced herself, Mona Billy from the University of Tilburg, to present us the next thematic block. Thank you, Mona.
Yes, exactly. So, welcome back after the lunch break. I hope you're not too tired, but rather super activated for the next session. I will give a short keynote on what we learned about motivating user engagement, a bit on the insights that we did in the project, and then we will have, right following after that, first a Q&A, of course, if you have any questions regarding that, and also a panel discussion, where we have one panelist that can unfortunately not be here today, but 3 panelists are, and we will have an interactive discussion hopefully afterwards. But as I said, I will start a bit with the topic, what have we learned about motivating user engagement? The slides will be familiar to those that... Sorry. There you go. Yeah. The first 2 slides will be familiar to those that have been here already yesterday. So I will just quickly recap on our 7 principles for user engagement and replication for user engagement. Basically, I think probably the 2 most important ones, maybe, are the first 2. So basically what we already heard a lot of times now today, right? No one-size-fits-all approach. It's very much based on each initiative, and each initiative has its own development and therefore has to use its own context. Not all at once approach is talking about that you don't need, you can't overwhelm citizens with too many requirements at one time. Understanding stakeholders, establishing trust, I think these are somehow explaining themselves. The use of social identity and also of social identity processes. This will also be an important topic of the panel discussion that we'll have afterwards. So we will present some learnings, especially in the context of social identities and processes associated with this in the panel discussion. Framing it collectively and, of course, evaluate whenever possible to be able to draw conclusions. As we said today, replication is for us, from Work Package 1 perspective, not a copy of an energy community or collective action concept, but rather choosing existing tools, concepts, and methods that work in a similar context and analyze your context before applying them on it. So basically, how we structure user engagement and motivation in this project is that we have as a basis psychological theory and behavioral science principles, where we use or we look at different models, at different, also like a lot of research that has already been done in how to engage and motivate citizens. And then based on this, we analyze the context. So who are the target stakeholders? What is the situational context, and what kind of level of involvement? And I think especially the level of involvement, I will come to that right after this slide, is something that's a very critical question for many initiatives, because it also allows you to differentiate between what kind of collaboration or not collaboration you want to have with the citizens. I think we somehow had that clash in the session before, that some really just want to inform their citizens about something, or they just want to let them know about a product, or just want them to be a part of something. And then what Ulfa was referring to was rather giving them the power, collaborating with them on joint decision making. And I think that we should not look at that as something that is opposing, but rather that is on a continuum where different initiatives can find themselves on this continuum. So after analyzing the context and your target stakeholders, we propose a design toolbox where we propose different methods that fit to the level of involvement you would like to have with your citizens or with the community you are talking about. As I said, closely coming to the context analysis, knowing who are your target participants, what are their needs, and looking at their opportunities, their motivators, and their abilities to participate. This is based on this model that it's probably too small to read it, but it's talking about capability, motivation, and opportunity. So analyzing if your target audience has, for example, the resources that are necessary to take part in a certain behavior. If they want to carry out the behavior, what motivates them to do so? And then also, do they have the, physical ability or the mental ability? Do they have the knowledge it needs to show the behavior that you want them to show? And another thing about analyzing the context, and this is the level of involvement I was referring to. So we proposed basically a 4-step rising level of involvement that then initiatives can check, okay, what kind of action do I want to do with the citizens or with the community I'm talking about? Do I just want to inform them? So do I want them communication in a unidirectional way? Do I want to let them know something? Do I want to consult them? So do I want to get feedback from them? Also in a unidirectional way, but basically the other way around. So what do I want to know from them? Then do I want to include them? That's even a higher level of involvement. So do we want to take decisions together? Do I want to include them in the decisions I take? Or do I want to really collaborate? And this is like a bottom-up initiative. Do they have the power to decide and to design their energy community or collective action? And based on this level of involvement, we developed a toolbox where different methods of how to engage and motivate citizens can be aligned along this rising level of involvement. It's all it's including a behavior science checklist and best practices. I will not go into much detail because it's only a 10-minute talk, but you can find all this information as well in our upcoming deliverable, which is due end of May, and can be found on the website. And we elaborated a bit more also on how to use these tools and what are best practices and what kind of behavior science principles you need to consider when using these tools for the different levels of involvement, depending on what level of involvement you would like to have. That's a bit a summary of what we did or what we learned, how we learned in the project. We had the chance to learn through and with different initiatives of the project. I will not spoil too much because the postcards that you see in the upper corner of our power and also the thermovolt, let's call it interventions, will be presented in the next in the panel discussion. So that are some actions where we learned from about our behavioral science. We also did a survey, we did some interactive gaming, and that is also a tool that I would like to show to you quickly as maybe also one thing that what was actually a discussive point in our team right now is that we think, okay, how can maybe initiatives also identify whether they are very similar or not? And we developed, no, that's not, unfortunately. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe it was not uploaded correctly. No worries. You can also go to the Decide website and check it out. So basically, we developed also an interactive game, which looks like a target and where you can drop different motivators, different actions, and you can prioritize them, and you get a picture out of it. What is your prioritization? What kind of actions do the citizens you're playing this game with like to take? What motivates them? What are the roles they are willing to take? And this is basically it already, a very quick go through. Work package 1, if there are any questions, feel free to ask. No questions. Please tell me you listen at least. Yes, please.
I just think you might, because I think it's better for the participants.
Oh, yeah. Can you please do the trick again and
yes,
put down the noise?
Either air or audio.
Thanks.
Yeah, you talked about the 4 levels of involvement, and I was just wondering, did you also basically try them out? So what's most important for the people who want to participate in energy communities? Do they just want to be informed? Do they want to be included? And what did you discover here, so in practice?
I think that is based very much on each initiative that we worked with. So basically the approach we took was that we sat together with the initiatives that we have and decide and try to develop what is relevant for them. Because I think some, as we heard before, some are not even, and that's totally okay, right? There's no values giving to that different levels. It's just that some want to have a bottom-up initiatives where they really want to give decisional power to the citizens, and some just want to inform them. And I think it was really interesting what Erika said before when she was talking about one group that was super active and really wanted to collaborate, wanted to participate, wanted to have an impact on regulatory. But then there's another group that maybe just wants to be somehow a part of it, but not too actively involved. I think it's very difficult to have a broad answer about everyone. I think it really depends first on the initiative, what each initiative wants to foster in their community, and then also on the people. Some are really, really highly involved and they like to get an active role, and maybe some just want to be like, give all the control and just be as efficient as possible without having much to do.
And what is your impression? What would you say most of the population would be? Would they be more active or more passive? Because in my impression, most of the people like to give everything away and say, okay, if you like to do it, but I don't want to have, I don't want to have work with it or have to deal with it actively. Is this also your impression?
I think that it is true for let's say a lot of people. It is true that they don't want to be involved. It's also, as we said before, it's time consuming, right? It's time and resources consuming to really actively take part. But I also think that we should at least give people the opportunity to actively take part if they want to, right? So they can, and maybe that is even then even more behavior change is possible when you're more actively involved. But I think it's difficult for me to draw a conclusion, but I don't know if there's any other comments to this. Feel free to comment. Yes.
I could comment. Another aspect to this behavioral science perspective is, of course, that everything is highly context dependent, and you would ask the question differently, right? You would ask, in this place where I want to establish an energy community, what's the share of people there in this very moment, because it's dynamic, that actually want to take a leading, active role in the community, right? And the target game that Mona presented, that is our approach to kind of somehow start talking to people, right? So they can drag and drop, for example, different roles they want to take on. They want to initiate, or participate, or invest. So what is the main activity? I could imagine, assuming in this very context. And then you can start building a network of people. I guess the quick message is ask more context specific and less like in the whole society.
Exactly. Thank you very much. That was perfectly said. I will not add anything to what Florian said. Are there any more questions to that one? Yes, please.
Maybe just an observation. Why did you, I guess, use user? Because user sort of implies more passive from the get-go, so just building on that. Like, how do you, if you're a user, then someone else is doing the thing and you're just using it. Where we're talking about, we heard earlier about the need to build movements, we need people that they collaborate in with your spectrum, etc.
So, sorry, I think I didn't get the question.
Well, just the framing for the session and that was user engagement.
User engagement.
So why?
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. It's also random because we mostly don't use users as a. Yeah, it's it's a good question. No, thanks a lot for bringing that up. It's true. We would probably not talk of users. We would probably more talk of stakeholders that include citizens. Yeah, maybe citizens or the community. So maybe we would rather call community engagement and community motivation. That's probably true. Maybe it's because also I mean, that's also, again, depending on the initiatives. For some initiatives that we work with, it's definitely users that we're talking about. But if we are talking about collaboration, we should definitely not talk about users. I agree.
Depends on. I mean, if we have a collaboration environment like the Our Power Marketplace, for instance, what we are offering, we can say customers, but we don't like customers because it's so passive. And sellers and buyers, and so altogether are users of the infrastructure we offer, but they are also living parts of these community on this marketplace, which is a digital frame for the community.
I mean, I ask because I think it's an interesting, like you talked earlier, as a status quo is an energy system where most people take what they're given, that's kind of commoditized. And community energy is ultimately about changing that. So status quo quite likes people to be users that just
Give us a better
We
word.
don't have much. No, I mean, but I think, as you say, like, the spectrum of collaboration makes sense, but if it's actually about communities getting together to do things differently.
Yeah.
How
So
involved
probably-
it makes sense.
So probably on that end of the scale, of the spectrum, you would not talk about users. You would probably talk about. But I mean, it also depends, as Ilfan said,
Designers.
designers. We could definitely find a better word for that, I guess.
Yeah, in German language, we also have the hardship of gendering these terms and even making it more complicated. Gestalterinnen.
I have a quick question. Your toolbox is for starting up a community, or is it also for later phases?
It's also for later phases. So in the toolbox, it is trying to, like, we have an explanation in the document where it's attached to. We have an explanation of the different phases that we would argue them in, and then in the toolbox, it's basically like a big overview, and you can then also see for which, like, we try to align a bit which tool fits best to which phase exactly. So that is also a bit depending on which kind of phase you're in.
Thank you very much. I do have another question regarding like the best and worst practice cases. You have a lot of cases, obviously, and this is very nice. So you can create a great toolbox, deliver something nice. On the other hand, they are obviously not comparable because every single location is unique in its own tools, in its own whereabouts, in its own stakeholder engagement, user engagement, involvement. So how do you separate that without comparing, without finding a toolbox in a general term, but in an individual term, rather on the one hand? And on the other hand, how do you differentiate the best and the worst practice cases? What's worst? What's best?
So we, as maybe coming to the second question first, as I said, we always try to evaluate. So when we, for example, try out different communication practices in the project, we actually try to set it up that way. You will see that in the panel discussion later, that we set it up in a way that it's randomly, it's a randomly controlled trial, so that you can actually draw conclusions from which worked best in which context, or which communication approach worked best, so that we can say it worked or it worked not. So that's what we try to establish within the project, that we use this approach to really have an evaluation of it. For the first question, that's of course a difficult one. Obviously, you can provide a lot of tools, and then it always depends on the context if it works or not. But that's why, and that is also something that we have been discussing yesterday, and I think it's a good approach, is if you analyze your context first, you can then look what worked in a similar context. So for example, in the panel discussion, you will hear about one thing that we tried out in a social housing context, which is quite specific from its target group, right? And so maybe if you're also an energy community working in social housing, then you could rather look at these results and draw some more conclusions than from something that worked in a, I don't know, super socioeconomic high-class district, right? So that's I think a bit the way I would approach it, looking at the tools and then checking out what worked in which context best. Okay, if there are no more questions, I guess we would, because we already talked a lot about the panel discussion, and now we can perfectly hop onto it, I guess. Is that directly afterwards? So you will change. Perfect. But I can already ask my panelists to join me on stage, to move to stage with me, which is Tom and Bernard and Ulfert. Yes. So maybe a bit of the structure. So first, one thing, unfortunately, yes, we have these presentations. I will present them in a second. Unfortunately, the second speaker, George Martinez, cannot be here today. He's from Klavi, who's the decider of our project. He wasn't able to join us in Graz, but he is, apparently he's there in the live stream, so I will wait. Hi, George. And I managed to have a little video chat with him before that I recorded, so we will get some input from him as well, and then we will have a look at the chat. So as you can see, who are presenting today, so Ulfert Höhne, who is co-founder and CEO of Our Power in Austria and also our team partner for our pilot in the site, will give a little presentation on a postcard experiment that we did together and also on some more learnings on engagement. Then, as I said, we will have George Martinez from Klavi in Greece, and Klavi is the cluster of bioeconomic and environment of Western Macedonia. And we will talk a bit of a replication action that we actually did in this site because they are an active replicant, which I think is an interesting learning because they actually are collaborating quite close with Domex, who's a pilot in the site, and we are currently replicating a survey that we did with them together. Then we'll have Tom Payne from Thermobot, who's also a project partner for our pilot in the site, and he will talk about some interventions that we did with them on social norms and as I said, further social interventions in the social housing context. And then we have Rainer Hoseger, who is a guest today for us. He's not within this site, but I had a good chance to get to know him last week in a quick call. And he will talk about social innovation and the energy community in Stans. So I guess welcome. Thanks a lot for joining today. And I guess I will lead the stage. We will structure, so this panel discussion is a bit differently structured than the last one. So just to quickly structure it for you, we will have 5 minutes presentations from each initiative. So you get to know them a bit and you get to know a bit about what we're talking. And then we have some panel discussion questions. And this is also very open for each input that you would like to give. And I'll leave George to go.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. So, this is our. I go to the side to see it better. Just a little background. Our Power is operating a peer-to-peer marketplace for energy, for green power. We've been founded in 2018, and since 2019, the first offer is on the marketplace. The offer is even the smallest generator with some kilowatts PV system on his rooftop can sell his overproduction to his friends and neighbors and everywhere, all over Austria. And everybody, every consumer, even in a city, can buy electricity directly from sellers on our marketplace, choose his generators for himself. Not one, but 2 or 3 or 4 to get the mixture of solar, wind, since renewables are team players and only function in teams. So as I said, in 2019, we started with the wonderful idea to have on-site events in the rural area close to our generators who are members of our cooperative. We are a cooperative. Then we have been founded with 19 members. Now we have 550 members in the cooperative. And then came COVID. And COVID blocked our strategy of having on-site meetings with the generators to really meet the friends and family and sell the electricity. We are not the marketing platform. They have to sell the electricity themselves. We are just offering the infrastructure to do everything from the electricity, economic stuff in the background up to the accounting and metering. So in 2020, we started and had no possibility to follow our strategy. And our regional office in Upper Austria, who is central for our first impulses, they have a trusted region there with having built already around 500 PV systems financed by citizens in the region. Around 15 megawatts of PV on 500 rooftops. So, and they were quite eager and said, okay, we have the real chance for everybody with his PV on his rooftop to sell the electricity to his neighbors instead to the market. And at that time, the market price for electricity was around 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's close to 25, but then it was 3 cents. So the chance to have market access for every household or every generator. But COVID blocked it, so people sat in their home offices and Googled around and detected prosumers via detecting PV systems, and then sent letters, 3-page letters, to 18,000 households with PV on their rooftops and offering them, hey, you don't need to sell it for 3 cents to the market, but you sell it to your friends and family. We build energy communities, which from the regulatory side were not there at that time. And some misconception blocked the really cooperation within the Decide project at that time. There were some talks and some telephones calls of our team with I think Florian and Sonia were mostly involved. But that was a really disaster. Out of these 18,000 letters, around 150 people called back. And that was tedious and disappointing. So now we became a learning company. Thanks to this Decide offer, we tried to figure out, focus the motivator for people and learn which is the really viable and effective motivator. And there you see our postcards. We said, okay, people want to work together with people, sell to your friends and neighbors, or people want to strengthen their region, have a prosperous region, sell your electricity in your region, it's for your region, or you want to save the climate, your production is an impact for climate security. And so we produced 3 different postcards. The experts of Uni Mannheim and Seeburg did the randomization, sent it out, and we had in the background for each of these motivators, climate, friends, or region, specialized landing pages so we could measure the incoming links. And we see climate, which I thought is the most prominent driver, is really the weakest of all. Friends is somehow even not better, but region is the star. And finally, at that time, hey, in the beginning, our homepage was like the climate activist Greta Thunberg, a little bit. And yeah, now we changed it. It's all region, learning from the experiment. I think that's all what I want to say now. So we are thankful to having been pushed to become a learning company, because that was our first step. Now we have to go on. We have developed our website to be specific on tracking and stuff. And I think this is the way we learn together with our users, users, how we all react on or what motivates us. Thanks. That's the point. And look at our website, ourpower.coop. You all can become members of this wonderful company.
I'm a member and feel happy and proud.
Yeah, Bernadette also is a member of our supervisory board.
Thanks a lot, Ufa. That's great to hear. We will go on. The next one is George Martinez. As I said, he's not here today, so I will click on play and the videos will play. Maybe just a short background. As I said already, Clavi is the cluster of bioeconomic and environment of Western Macedonia. It's a platform for cooperation involving both the regional and local authorities, different research institutes, and enterprises in environmental thinking, and of course also the local society. They are working towards decarbonization and green development in Western Macedonia, and they are, as I said, a decider, so a replicant in the DECIDE project. Yes. So next is Tom from Thermovolt, and I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you. First, a quick recap of who we are and what we do, and then an insight on how we work together with Work Package 1. So at Thermovolt, we developed a small device that we can place in electric storage heating devices. You can think of electric boilers, storage heaters, heaters. As long as there is a buffer or a buffer vessel, we can store energy in that effective energy in the form of heat. How do we use that stored energy? We have two models, one behind the meter, so how do we optimize for the end user? You can think of increasing the energy efficiency, because most of the devices are not managed well or installed properly. We can of course increase the self-consumption of these devices when there are solar panels near. We help in limiting the peak of these devices, so making sure that these devices don't turn on when there is a big peak of, in the rest of the household. And last but not least, we optimize for dynamic tariffs. It's a lot and it's all at once. And we notice that our end users have no clue how to do this in reality. So we take this away from them and we make sure they don't have the hassle, they don't have the bother. We will take care of that comfort for them. Not only the heating comfort, but also the energy optimization. So that's the storyline behind the meter. Of course, what we can do also beyond the meter is use these devices as a tool for flexibility. Think of energy communities. But in our case, also for offering flexibility services to DSOs and TSOs. And that's how we use indeed these energy absorbing devices in order to maintain a certain grid frequency, and that's a payment model in our case as well. What does this have to do with DECIDE? You might ask, and how did we work together with Mona? Our main customer or audience where we sell these devices to are social housing companies or patrimonial managers, so student flats, senior living, social housing. So those are one of our main customers, and they get this storyline I just told. That's fine for them. They pay the bill, we go and we try to install. Challenge that we have is that we don't have a direct contact when we sell these devices with the end customer. So we install them, and from the end user perspective, we are installing it for free. And it doesn't mean that they will open the door and let us in to do the installation. And that was the gap. What we noticed before we started is that we had a big fallout in our technicians going door by door and noticing the doors being closed, so people didn't accept the solution that we offered. So we reached out to Mona and said, we have a problem. Can you help us fix it, or at least close the gap a bit compared to before? I think it has been discussed before. We split up for, I think, 250 apartments in Antwerp in 2 blocks. The classical letter we sent, we have an appointment for you, we pass by at this moment in time, an opt-out principle. And then we added a letter, also 50% with a social norm in it. What is a social norm? In reality, when we sell to social housing companies, we first do a proof of concept. We show to them it works, these people save energy, save money, so that helps. We use that information to show in the letter, okay, in your neighborhood with the same company, in this case it was the EDR warning, we installed the device and people reap the benefits, and then we push that letter as well. So 2 letters in parallel, one like we normally did, with the failure rate we normally have, and one indeed with the social norm attached to it. What we see is a big increase in effect. So it shows only as a bit of 9% to 10%, it doesn't seem as much, but the cost for us as a company is quite high to do this. So the simple addition of other people have this as well increased our first time right tremendously. If we go even further and we say, okay, were we eventually successful in installing the solution, it even increased more, and I think only one person refused the installation. So this is the thing we did concretely, and we have updated our letters ever since towards the new social housing companies, and we see this increase repeating itself. There was a test for more or less 250 households, and that was the sample size. We are now trying this again with a different group of, I think, 900 households in Ghent, where we are sending out 4 letters. The standard letter, we normally have a letter based on trust, meaning we claim 20% savings, but 20% that's on average. It depends person to person, building to building. That means you can fall in either of the 3 categories we described. And then we had a big push on collective efficacy. To see, okay, how indeed you can form a group to see indeed if that has a big point or a big impact. So we said that control level, trust only, collective assets only, and a combination of trust and the collective part. And the results are coming in now because we're rounding up the installations as we go. That's it for me, I think. Voilà.
Thanks. Yes, thanks a lot. And this brings us directly to our last panelist, Rainer Moseger, and I will give the floor to you. Thanks a lot for.
Okay, so thanks a lot for the invitation and having me here. So I'm happy to see all these presentations and also your work you're doing in that background, because it's quite relevant also for our case. So I want to present now. It's a real benchmark to be really short, but I promise 5 minutes. So I try to go through it. So from my background, I'm a sociologist working with since 20 years in the area of urban development and regional development. And I started in the year 2015 in Stanz-Mürztal. It's a small valley, 1,800 inhabitants, 700 households. And it's somehow in the middle, located in between Graz, we're here, and Vienna, in the region of Upper Styria. It's really a rural area, so we don't have many businesses, so people go for work to the bigger cities, so there are lots of industry, etc. So it's more or less a small, calm municipality. In 2015, when I had been starting to work there had been a lot of challenges, and there was somehow a real mixture of problems that accumulated in the municipality. And in this year, new mayor has been introduced or voted. And so we have been facing on population decline, depletion of the village center with vacancies, loss of supply infrastructure. So the last local shop went away. There hadn't been some meeting points for the community to come together. Huge dependency on the automatic traffic, so on your own car, no public transport, and a lack of participation in decision-making processes. So as we say, there had been a lack of democracy because it was dominated by traditional parties, political parties. So here just 2 images. So the last store that had been banned, and so no meeting points, and we started a participation process really to strengthen the village center, so to introduce again somehow an infrastructure in the municipality to meet, to have the possibility to cooperate, to be together, talk about what you want to do, and had a real plan. So we did it with quick wins, hands-on, invited many people. So go with us this way, and let's strengthen different things you are interested into in your village, but also, of course, invest in the new village center with introducing a new local shop, bringing housing in the middle of the village center, so there hadn't been people living before there, and to renovate the infrastructure also for the municipality. And in 2020, so it was really able to reopen the first shop again there with, so it's orientated on organic and regional products. Also to having this new meeting room at the municipality where we have conferences, open spaces for the people in our community, but also initiatives like the communal e-taxi. So it's driven by 20 volunteers. They're making a real affordable new mobility projects within the municipality. So at this time, we had been around 80 people that had been working voluntary for the development of the municipality. And so in 2020, we said, okay, maybe it's a good time now to focus on the local energy transition in the municipality, because at this time we already had 12 windmills in the municipality, so renewables had been an issue, but not really for the people, for the population who are living there. So we started a project and had been lucky that we are funded from the Austrian Research Funding Agency, FFG, with the project Stanz Plus. So it's about to establish a plus energy quarter in the village center in a rural area, also to make this replicable with the issues of sector coupling, of flexibilization patterns, storage systems, but also to think about business plans. So how can energy future be established in a small municipality? So we had time, let's say 1 year till June 2021, and this was the big point, the big time step here in Austria, because when the EAG, Erneuerbare Ausbaugesetz 2021 was introduced, and where the regulatory possibilities have been introduced to establish renewable energy communities. So we had really developed business plans, we had stakeholder engagement already before, and then really had been able to doing this step and to invite municipality to inform them about the new possibilities, to make together a cooperative sharing electricity, and to establishing and developing together business plans within the area of energy transition in the municipality. So at the first town hall meeting, we invited, so we have been thinking we will be glad if there would be 20 or 30 people joining us. So we have been happy, it have been 17 people coming there. It was at the end of January, so one of the first events after lockdown last winter. And now we founded our cooperative, so the event was last week, and we have now 60 official members within the municipality, and we're quite happy because 700 households and 60 members. It's real, yeah, for us good thing that we really reached the population there. So we are working in working groups there on different issues, technical issues like photovoltaic. There are one group who is dealing with small-scale hydro power we want to introduce. There's one group who is working on Vision 2030 and the future of energy transition. And we also have the possibility to work together with the Austrian Blockchain Center. So think really in the future, if we have a highly digitalized energy community, so which other possibilities rise out of this. So we are thinking about using the blockchain just for administration of the energy community, but if you're using this technology, so there could be also the possibility to make e-tokens and maybe to make digital vouchers out of this, so to introduce a local currency system. So I think I don't have to say a lot of our energy policy goals because they are developing. So, and as said before, social innovation is for us really the key, because we know we have the technical solution to go into the future, but the core issue is how can we involve people, how can we engage people really to go with us on this way. Thank you. I hope it was.
Well, thanks a lot. I think that was also a very vivid example of how engagement can also look like. And I would like to first give the floor to you. If there are any questions you have directed to the initiatives that just presented, feel free to ask. If not, we will just start with the panel discussion, and you can of course still hop in later. Starting panel discussion, I guess. So I think I have to. I cannot click again.
Always technical problems.
So I prepared 4 questions for the discussion, and I mean, as we are only 3, I think you can probably, if you feel like you can answer them, just feel free to answer. So basically, the first thing I would like to ask is, what are your main learnings? So let's call it main learning. You have to break it down to one very specific point. What is your main learning that you took from user engagement activities that you did? Maybe Ufa, starting with you.
Main point is thinking is of help. So reflection is a wonderful thing, and to get the tools from experts and work together with real experts on consumer psychology and tools how to get it out is comfortable and ensuring and goes in the right direction. So that's the main learning. Become a learning company and work therefore together with people who know how to do it.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
I want to say the same, but I will adapt a bit. So the learning part is important, but what was interesting to see is that you don't necessarily need to change the process in your company or the way how you engage with people drastically. It's a small change, an extra paragraph on a letter that can already have a huge difference. And I think for me that's the main learning.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so my main learning, and I'm talking now about 15 years being in this participation processes, we had a quite interesting talk at lunch and shared our experiences, and it was about these hidden knowledges you have in the community and how to find them. So my experience was when I started to work in participation, we had been sitting in such rooms or with such a setting, we had a flip chart over there, and collecting some issues that are maybe relevant, then giving green or red dots on it, and then we made a report and gave it to the mayor. Then most time this report was in the desk of the mayor and nothing happened. Yeah? And so my learning was really to go out of such a settings when participation, really to go out and try to find people and think about how you can involve them with their skills and their knowledge they have, and maybe it's just they can make a bench where people can meet. And so, but this gives somehow many people the experience that they are part of something. And this is also learning, thinking stance. We have the possibility so that this energy community issue is part of a bigger picture, because it's about somehow how to develop the municipality or to go to the future.
That brings me directly to my next question, which is a bit aligned to this one. I think you have to have. I swear it's nothing I do, right? It's just nothing I do either. So, how do you think this learning that you just described to me can be translated into replication?
I take the start again.
Yeah.
I think the idea of a toolbox is one point, and the second thing is to have some stories of somebody else doing it in a parallel environment. For instance, writing letters to your prospective customers is a thing we all usually do from our gut feeling, because, I mean, we in our power have experienced salespeople, and they said, hey, wait, I know how to write a letter to prospective customers. But that tends to become a cloud of everything, of 15 different arguments, and we had no idea how to learn from this. So point one is focus, and second is, okay, let's do a kind of a personal toolbox. That means hey, we have to have something we can do again and again and do it more and more precise, and have in our case, the tracking systems installed and the evaluation of the trackings to come step by step closer to our customers. And I found what Tom said or showed so great, seeing step by step closer to the customer in measurement. I didn't probably show your graphs in my presentation. Thanks for the graphs showing. But Tom did it in a wonderful way, and having tools and knowing how to apply them. That's the point. He did it better.
Now, for me, I think dare to experiment. It's not that we now test one thing, that's the holy grail in the end. So we test again and try to improve and improve and improve until the message sticks. And then you go, probably in our case, to different markets, and you start that process all over again. So there is not one size fits all. You need to continuously iterate.
Yeah. I agree. I know, would you say?
Yes, I think there was before the discussion about contexts, and out of my case, when we're talking about the municipality, because there are different contexts in each municipality, different people. But I think it's always the question about set and settings in these cases. And so therefore, for instance, municipality can create a framework where they can bring people together and where they can engage people for such actions. We have been lucky, for instance, we are part of a preparatory action of the European Commission for smart rural areas. And so in 2020, when we had been in full lockdown, so we had the task to create a smart village strategy. It was perfect. Desktop work, we had doing a lot of participation before, so we knew a lot about what people are thinking, what they want to. And so we really created a strategy with vision, with goals, with measures. And somehow having such a strategy really at the local level, it really helped us to have this framework and really to have this focus, which step after step we should go in this direction. So this focus, I also can say, is quite important because this is such a dynamic field we are working in. So having your focus and having your path you want to go there, it's important.
May I turn the question also to you? Did you learn something about energy communities?
We learned a lot. I mean, somehow, somewhere we took this knowledge from when I just took the keynote. No, so I think we were also, and that's, I think I also appreciate that Tom mentioned it. I think experimenting in that way, also together with initiatives, like really going out of this, let's say, call it lab university cosmos, but really into the field and having the possibility to work with initiatives in real life testing, really communication strategies, I think helped us a lot to learn about. We didn't know. I think we all guessed that climate, for example, would have worked best. Who knew it would be region, right? That was not our hypothesis. So I think I totally agree that this step-by-step approach and really always experimenting in the context that you're working in helped us a lot to learn about
yeah, I mean, somehow we are learning as a whole society in this case. We even don't know ourselves what we are reacting on if we, say, build up a cooperative in some village where we are. So, yeah, I think we have to really elaborate further just the question, regional climate, and go for it. I don't think that's an answer when finished.
No,
it's probably just put it in the wrong wording or whatever.
Yeah, Mona, before you go on, we also have an answer from George to this question here.
Thanks a lot, George. Yes, that's great.
So now we are getting really virtual, and he says, so far we didn't learn anything significant, but with the DECIDE survey running in our region, we are very curious to see if users of district heating have different opinions on smart heating compared to the natural gas heating users already assessed by the project. Just to add that.
Thanks a lot.
There is also a question from Martha that's online. And then an answer from George, and maybe I'll stop.
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's super nice. It's so hybrid, right?
Discussion starting now, yeah. The question was, who are the most difficult people to engage based on your experience? Probably also a good question for the others then. And George's answer was, based on our experience in the context of the desired replication, I think that the most difficult part is engaging and motivating public organizations due to their particular internal organization and administrative procedures.
I think that is a experience that I share with George when we were talking about replicating the survey. I think the most frustrating part so far for them was to really bring the survey to the end customer. So the in-between step was so far the most difficult, I guess. So, but yes, we can totally open that question from Martha to you as well. What do you think? Do you have an answer? Do you think there's a specific group that is very difficult to engage?
So maybe my experience in general in this development of stands is that you have different issues and you can motivate maybe different people. For instance, there is this voluntary e-taxi service. This is dominated when talking about gender by male, because like they can drive an e-car and talk about it. Then we opened a swap shop in a vacuum shop, so this was dominated by women, for instance. The group who had been working there, and now the energy community, it's again dominated by male persons. And so we really have to think about how to combine or integrate different issues, maybe to attract, also to bring different people into. So for instance, when we talk about this digital voucher or local currency system, so we really integrate women to talk about, so what could be the usages, what could be the incentives to get this. We are talking about measures, how to react on the energy poor households and to integrate them. This is also because it's a social issue, more that, for instance, women are in there, and so we try to make a portfolio on issues around this energy community, really to make it more diverse.
I think that's, from my point of view, I totally agree. We have been having a webinar on this actually. I had to think of that Sylvia organized, and we were also talking about this topic that often that we have, if we look at diversity within energy communities, it is not given, right? There's like a huge, like the majority of people is well educated, high middle class male. So and that is something that we need to change. I totally agree. I saw a question from Carsten also.
Yeah, I have a question concerning group dynamics, and they might change over time, and especially within COVID, there was potentially also a lack of observance of the group dynamic because you had no contact potentially, and it could be that you have invested into communication, but it was kind of a black box, and you might have not gotten so much feedback. My question is on group dynamics and how any learnings on that part, how to also overcome conflicts or non-communication within the group that you are targeting, and where you were in a certain period unsure and didn't have the grip potentially of how to move ahead over time. So that reflection would be interesting for me to learn. Thanks.
Does someone want to start?
What we sometimes notice when we're installing, especially in big social housing apartment blocks, so 200-300 people, is that there are always more dominant people than others. And if you can get these dominant people on board, the installation go quite smoothly. If you don't get these people on board, it spreads like a fire why the installation shouldn't happen. So that's a challenge. In the end, we solve this by then going physically to the specific location and talking to people to see indeed what their main conflicts are or what their main issues are. In the end, and that's with IoT devices in general, you have a lot of sensors, you have a lot of data, you need to be GDPR compliant, and these are already a lot of difficult words to use in that specific context without even discussing the full energy debate that we have. But then indeed, the personal connection helps. And or it's us doing this, or it's indeed a social housing company that have their social assistants assisting us in this type of activity and talking to people. And that's why, or that's how we try to get indeed the group to behave, sounds bad, but to go in the direction we want.
Our situation as our power is totally different, but number one is always the question how to measure who are difficult customer segments. The other way around is easy. From of our 550 members, there are more than 75% male. The average age is around my age, and so you see, somehow we don't succeed in attracting the young people. On the other hand side, impression after the COVID lockdown, we had to find new ways to get into contact. So we offered a couple of online dialogue events, as well in villages where we had contact to, as in issues thematically, for instance, and the most successful was around gender, meaning the energy transition is female. And we had 2 dialogues on this with always around 50 to 70 participants, and that was a great thing. We should go on for this. At the moment, we are a little bit out of resources in this direction, but I think it's necessary to start communicating in different groups, and don't say interest groups, but social groups, to get them on board. And we are starting the first female energy communities now. So it goes in the direction, but you have to have cases to talk about to make people getting interested and motivating going in the same direction. As long as energy is something for old white men, it's really difficult to motivate the young female activists on this, but we're pushing in the direction. And now I would just add the question, can consumer psychology help us in this direction? I mean, we need tools.
The question is, do you know why we have old men in our power? What is the reason? Maybe they have more time, or
the question of power is the question of power.
Maybe it's a question of power, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's the question of money. It's a question of who has the say, and it's just a traditional cultural misformation.
An energy sector.
Yeah, it's the energy sector, and energy is technology, is something dangerous, is about the power to decide.
It's a broader system problem.
Yeah, deep system misdevelopment.
So maybe I'll just add shortly, so we don't have just old men, so just mainly men, but the age range is, let's say, 35 to 65.
But not the young ones.
Not the really young ones, so we want to introduce the issue in the school, of course, and start there also with the issue. But we see the segment of the techies that are interested in tools and how to play with it, also in gamification, is of course also maybe an anchor point to bring young people into.
And you can intervene organizationally. I mean, that's why I'm so happy that Bernadette joined us in the management, in the supervisory board, just to show we are broader. And even in our staff, we are just now getting more on younger people.
We had a similar discussion with several colleagues about this. We noticed that the guy that is in charge is not very wide all the one.
I can't understand.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit? It's very hard to understand.
It's the bill payer. The bill payer.
The bill payer.
The bill payer is meant to be white. That's me. And the second comment, I totally agree with Tom's comments. Although we work in Greece, we equip natural gas boilers with IoT devices, we face two identical barriers. The first one is we need to capture the dominant installer, not actually the user of the social housing company, but the installer. And we have to persuade them that we can face together as GDPR risk. So if we manage to keep the dominant installer that has also GDPR concerns, there is no way to make him a client.
The question of power.
Question of power, yes.
Yeah, it's just I'm curious to hear how you think of applying the results of this research in other contexts, and go for another area. I think the results of the Prospective experiment can apply or Tom in other settings. So just your opinion on that. But also, how do you think other people, like you heard, participatory programming, the social norm, the messaging, if you think that you would experiment those other things in your context. So just to be on that.
Oh, I think my main message is don't hesitate to experiment. And if you're a small company, it's easy, meaning changing that extra linea and that one letter you send, that's a question of an hour of work, and then you can send it out. But even for bigger companies, yeah, you test it with a subset. Or in his case, a specific area where you say, okay, for this specific region, you are enthusiastic, let's try something else, maybe not regional orientation, but I don't know, family orientation, for example, to see indeed if that makes even more sense than region, who knows. If you go towards scaling, you need to be a bit more careful on how to do it, but even then you can still use subset. In this case, with this specific client, we can do something else. And in our case, we involved always a social housing company. Okay, we are part of Decides. We want to have this test, or can we do this test with your end user or your end customers? So don't hesitate to ask and don't hesitate to experiment.
And maybe one final comment from my side. This is about energy communities, and it's great to see how much energy you put into your communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think that was already, that's such a nice comment. We will have to end on this one because it's too nice not to do it. I would say thanks a lot to the panelists. We did not go through all questions, but I think we had a lot of questions also from everybody else listening, which is great. Thanks a lot for presenting and answering all questions. And I think, yes, we hopefully all learned a bit on user engagement and motivation. And I think it's we already discovered in the previous discussions, and we will probably in the future discussions, how important this social side of energy communities is. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thank you.